So our first speaker is Hania Bitar, and she is CEO of the Palestinian Youth Association for Leadership and Rights Activation, PLARA. Welcome, Hania.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you, everybody, for really taking the time to be with us today. In fact, in 1946, there were people in Germany and in Poland who said, we didn't know. Today, no one can say they didn't know. You can only say you didn't want to know. You are here today because you are part of the people who chose to know, who chose to act, who decided that we cannot and we should not allow the next generation to inherit a world where death is more beautiful, more relaxing, less painful, and more dignified than life. You are with us today from different parts from around the world because your conscience will not allow you to relax or turn your back to atrocities, injustice, and genocide wherever they take place around the world. You are with us because you want to take the responsibility of today so that whenever your children or grandchildren ask you in the future, what did you do to stop the war, to stop the genocide? You will not feel ashamed or disgraced. As Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Is there going to be an end to the horrors that Palestinians are forced to endure in Gaza? To the injustice that civilians are paying for with their own lives? Just a few days ago, Israel struck tents near Al-Aqsa Hospital, where people from northern Gaza were told to relocate. The whole world watched live as at least 4 people were burned to death. Scores others, including women and children, suffer from severe burns, which cannot be cured simply because only 3 hospitals out of the 12 in North Gaza are still operating. And even if the people would be allowed by Israel to move and reach those hospitals don't have the resources or the capacity to really take care of those injured and pained and burnt people. Just before that, actually, another school serving as a shelter in Nusayrat was targeted by Israeli airstrikes and left more than 20 people dead, killed, and tens others were injured. The rest of the people who used to have shelter in this school are now left with no place to go to. The attacks on northern Gaza has intensified, especially around Jabalia. According to OCHA, which is the UN organization for the coordination of humanitarian affairs, estimates that since the beginning of October, over 55,000 people have been displaced from Jabalia. Those who remained actually in their homes are stranded with no food and no water. The images of the traumatized people running hopelessly and not knowing where to go to, where to find a safe space, are actually heartbreaking. Since Israel began its war, its invasion of Gaza, which killed more than 42,000 people up till now, Palestinians actually, including more than 744 Palestinians, including 164 children have been killed in the West Bank. And more than 6,000 250 people have been injured. As Israel carries out its devastating war on Gaza, Israeli settlers, are exploiting the lack of global attention to the West Bank to expel Palestinians from their land, and often this is done under the protection of Israeli army and soldiers. According to OCHA, at least 1,423 incidents of settler violence in the West Bank were recorded, with around 4 cases or incidents a day. In fact, we are now in the season of harvesting olive. And usually this used to be the time for celebration because lots of people, of households, depend on olive and the oil for their livelihood. But unfortunately, as has been going for so many years, and people started to know that our problem didn't start on October 7, so people became very aware of our history and since when we are suffering. And actually in this olive harvest season, up till now, there are more than 32 attacks by Israeli settlers on Palestinians. And the result was more than 39 Palestinians were injured. And one woman who was picking olives also was killed. And the settlers actually uprooted or vandalized or stole more than 600 olive trees. And even before this olive harvest season started in August of this year, Israel has launched one of its largest military offenses in 2 decades, simultaneously attacking 4 Palestinian areas, Tulkarem, Tubas, Jenin, and Nablus, where at least 18 people have been killed since the start of that offensive. Our Palestinian human rights organizations like Al-Haq and like Al-Mizan addressed the international community in their statements and asked them to immediately intervene and implement countermeasures against Israel as required by international law. It was very obvious that Israel used and employed the same tactics that mirror what has been used in Gaza, in their attacks, in the genocidal campaign in Gaza, particularly attacks on hospitals, attacks on health care facilities, and the use of excessive, indiscriminate force. The message is clear. You will have no life, no memories left, no livelihood. You have to start from below scratch. Look at Gaza and learn the lesson. This is Israel's message to the West Bank, to Lebanon, and to any other country on their list. In the past year, more than 4,500 people, Palestinians, have been displaced in the West Bank after Israeli forces demolished their homes. A total of 1,768 homes were demolished, and the highest number of homes were demolished actually in Tulkarem, Jerusalem, and Jenin. Life in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem is characterized by a continuous and systemic control of land and natural resources. Many people envy us because we live in Jerusalem as Palestinians, but in fact, little do they know what does it mean to be a Palestinian Jerusalemite. As a Palestinian Jerusalemite, you can never dream of building your own home, simply because you need a permit from Israel to do that. If you are lucky enough, like my neighbor Samir in Wadi al-Juz in East Jerusalem, He got the permit he applied for 15 years after he applied for it. So now he's happy. At last, after 15 years, he has his own home built next to my house in Jerusalem. Amnesty International actually published a report in 2002 where it reviews the series of Israeli measures and policies towards Palestinians, including expropriation of land, illegal killing, forced transfer, movement restrictions, and denial of citizenship. All of these factors crystallize into an apartheid crime. And as the Secretary General of Amnesty International said, that report reveals the true extent of the apartheid regime in Israel. Whether they, meaning us, the Palestinians, whether they live in Gaza, in East Jerusalem, the rest of the West Bank, or in Israel itself, Palestinians are treated as an inferior racial group, and their rights are consistently denied. Despite all we go through in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, no pain and no suffering compares to that of our people in Gaza. The pain that they have endured and still are enduring, the killing that all of you have been witnessing. You will not be with us today if you were not already active and pursuing and learning and doing your best to really support justice. And actually, the former emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, if you've heard of him, have once said throughout history, it has been the inaction of those who could have acted, the indifference of those who should have known better, the silence of the voice of justice when it mattered most, that had made it possible for evil to triumph. At least we are gathered today because we do not want for evil to triumph. We do not want pain, loss, agony, and injustice to be characteristic of how people, neither in Palestine nor anywhere else in the world, should live through. Before we go to the life testimonies from Shahd and Ala from Gaza, I would like to end by reading you a few verses written by a Palestinian poet called Khaled Mahmoud Jum'a. He's a poet and a story writer from Gaza. And he says, "O rascal children of Gaza, you who consistently disturb me with your screams from under my window, you who filled every morning with rush and chaos, you who broke my vase and stole the lonely flower from my balcony, come back and scream as you want and break all the vases, steal all the flowers. Come back, just come back." Thank you.